Continuing, Sridhar Swami in his commentary on 3.5.25. 3.5 is dealing with, he writes that Maya is obedient to the glance of the Lord. So the internal potency of Mahavishnu has a name, and her name is Rama Devi. And there's a shadow or reflection of Rama Devi, and that's Chaya Devi, or by different names, Pradhan, Prakriti, which is what the topic is here. And Prakriti means material nature. But material nature is nothing but a reflection of the spiritual nature. So to say the reflection is Maya, the source is also Maya. That's what Sridhar Swami is saying. Maya is obedient to the glance of the Supreme Lord. In 2 verses previously, Sridhar Swami comments that the word Atmecha, or the desire of Atma, in this case the desire of Atma referring to Vishnu, not the Jiva. And Ichcha, Atma Ichcha, that's the desire of Atma, means Maya, that's spiritual. Just different references where it's verifying. In some cases, the word Maya means spiritual because matter is resting upon spiritual. There is a relationship, it's a sambandha discussion. What's the relationship between things and the source of emanation? The sambandha discussion. So to say the thing is dependent upon its source, then in that case, what the thing would be identified using that name, or the other way around. This is made clear in later verses. This is now going on in chapter 5, text 26-27. Bhagavan, the Lord of Mahavaikuntha, in his Svangsa expansion as the Purusha, full of potency, in a moment of time placed the jivas into Maya, which became agitated by the gunas. This is creation. Impelled by time, from the invisible Prakriti arose Mahatattva, composed of knowledge, in Sattva Guna. This manifests the universe situated within itself and destroys ignorance. No explanation, just use of the term Maya again. In 10th chapter 13, that's the stealing of the calves and cowherd boys. So in the process of that, Balaram calls the energy of his brother Vimohini. That Maya means mercy, because in Vishwa Prakash dictionary it says Maya means either deceit or mercy. Another authority, Trikanda Shesha, says Maya means illusion or intelligence. Later in the Brahma Vimohan Lila, the word Maya simply means influence. Since the Lord has no fault in revealing Maya, and the examples show this, the word Maya should have that meaning in those particular instances, according to Sridhar Swami. All is in agreement. That is so. Sometimes we find devotees, maybe ourselves, get bewildered. Wait a minute, it says this, and over there it says that, and over there it says that. So what's going on here? Why these contradictions? And which one is it? and, I'm bewildered, and things like that. Sridhar Swami is helping us understand terminology doesn't have to be always the same in all circumstances. It's not regular use of English language. It's not one word always mean in all circumstances. It's context specific. No, language is important. Certainly in Sanskrit, it's super important. But one word can have different meanings depending upon context, and we should understand accordingly and not get bewildered, which sometimes happens with devotees that read scripture. In this section, the word Maya means the Lord's inconceivable energy. So that's Krishna decided to show his inconceivable energy. That's a spiritual inconceivable energy. Then he refers to Bhagavad Gita again, 9.4. Maya tatamidam sarvam jagat avyakta murtina, etc. I pervade this whole universe by my form, invisible to material senses, jagat avyakta murtina, since I am the cause. All entities are situated in me, since I am their cause. But I am not in them, since I am completely detached. Nice translation. If the Lord does not touch Maya, his presence there is illusion. That place is illusion. That is true. However, the superior energy of the Lord is a manifestation of his Swarup in Vaikuntha and other places. This is now arguing against God is formless. And if he appears in this world, he's taking on covering of matter. It's arguing against impersonalism. Quoting Bhagavatam 2.9.10, this is the chapter where Brahma is getting his realizations. There is no influence of Maya at all, what to speak of its products, such as material elements. In Vaikuntha, the inhabitants are fully dedicated to the Lord and are worshipable by the devas, asuras, and devotees. Now it quotes this particular verse, 10:28-14. Hari revealed to the cowherd man his abode, which is beyond material darkness. All of this is to help us understand what it is that he showed and what are the potencies by which Krishna showed what he showed. It's, for many people it's too much. Well, this analytical thing. But it's for being precise when sometimes one gets confused because we see some word used this way and same word used that way. And two more references. This is now from Brahma Vimohan Leela, chapter 13. When Brahma became bewildered about what he saw and was no longer able to look at these forms which were inconceivable, expansions of Krishna's power, self-revealing, proved by the scriptures through negation of matter, which were beyond matter, Krishna, understanding his bewilderment, immediately removed the covering created by his energy. So it's under his control. Then next, in that same chapter, the forms all had eternal, unlimited forms, full of knowledge and bliss, which were one form. Their great glory was not even to be touched by the Atma Gyanis. That's the end of this morning's class. So we're getting this very detailed, refined, perplexing description of what it was that Krishna was going to be showing. The details of what he showed are coming up, but what the purpose of what he showed was you exercising his Maya, and it wasn't the material Maya, it's his own spiritual Maya. And in what he showed, they were in their spiritual forms. Krishna was in his Swarup, and he was being worshipped by the personified Vedas, which are certainly beyond the modes. And so everything is beyond the modes. Everything is tamasak param. It's all spiritual. So to do the all spiritual, it was spiritual. Potency, doing his bidding. And those things that Krishna showed, it's from chapter 13, it's beyond the range of the Atma Gyanis. Now, what Brahma saw is just a different angle of vision or different perspective than what the residents of Braja saw. He saw the spiritual world. No, in Brahma's case, he saw the spiritual world and the universe because he saw all the potencies. But the potencies that he saw, they were spiritual potencies. Spiritual potencies, material potencies have their spiritual counterparts, so we can say spiritual potencies. And then one can get confused. Well, wait a minute. Earth, water, fire, air, ether, those are material potencies, but they have their spiritual counterpart. And those spiritual counterparts are personified. Just go quickly over to what we're discussing in the evening is what Mother Jasoda saw within Krishna's mouth. And the list is really long list of what she saw. But half of the list are things that are, to material sense perception, they're invisible, like mind. Anyone seen a mind? And time. Anyone seen time? And so forth. Mahatattva, false ego. We know that these things exist, but how do you see them? And the explanation of our acharyas was they were shown to Mother Jasoda personified. Because whereas there's the person, then it's to be understood there's also the energy of that person. Just like if you were to see the sun god, you'd see effulgence. You're not going to see the effulgence. But so it is implied. You see sun god, you see effulgence. That's one of the things that happened when Sangya was given in marriage to the sun god, Vivaswan. She closed her eyes because he was too bright. And then he said, oh, this is offensive, so you're going to have a son who's death personified, Yama. And she said, no, please. It wasn't out of, I meant no offense. And he said, all right, then you'll have twins, and Yamuna will be Yamaraja's twin sister. And by taking bath in the Yamuna, then one will become cleansed of having to see Yamaraj if there are sins. These days, because of this pandemic situation, everybody's sending everybody all kinds of things, classes. And so somebody sent me just yesterday, an ISKCON devotee immersed in the Jamuna, saying all kinds of things about what has been the effect for 2 months when factories have not dumped pollution into the river Jamuna. And he showed in the video, reaching in the Jamuna, just like it's very pure. There's, as I'm sure you're well aware, there's been all this terrible uproar about the contamination of the river Jamuna, the sacred river Jamuna. But the pandemic has purified her waters. So many things. So, Sankhya is sometimes perplexing, just like all of what we've been hearing is perplexing, in one sense. It's clarifying, but it's also like very detailed. And I've just a little sharing that's on a Sankhya topic. When Sankhya speaks of the senses and sense objects, the senses don't mean the organ, the ear, the nose, the eyeball. That's the sense organ, but the sense, the 5 knowledge-acquiring senses, they're subtle. And it's through the knowledge-acquiring senses that the organs act. And then there's devas that are in charge of the senses. If the devas restrict the power of the sense, then the organ could be just fine, but you can't see, hear, or smell, touch, or taste. When people get diseased, like coronavirus, you lose taste. It's just that, that the sense power is withdrawn. The organ is still there, but the sense power is withdrawn. And that sense power of the devas, where do they get their power? From Bhagavan or from Vishnu. And they can't do their thing without Vishnu or without the personality of Godhead. So that's a little Sankhya teaching. And then a little lesson on japa. I'm just going to share this and then end. Bhaktisiddhanta explains, using our modern terminology, how to achieve mindfulness. It's a buzzword these days, all over the place, in the corporate world, in the marketing world. Before the pandemic hit, I was invited to go to a college program at University of Illinois in Chicago. It's downtown. And we were driving through downtown, and over there was, a big sign saying the Mindful Burger. Because it's marketing. What's a mindful burger? Just marketing. Green is another marketing buzz. So, mindfulness is popular, but what is it and how to achieve it? It's a Buddhist terminology that speaks about being in the moment and don't be in the past and don't be in the future, just be in the moment and be in the moment and be in the moment with the goal of going beyond the moment. What's that? Well, that's nirvana. But to get to nirvana, you got to be mindful. You practice mindfulness. So Bhaktisiddhanta is explaining mindfulness this way, that the object of mindfulness is a restless mind. So how to curb the restless mind? Then he explains. The restless mind can be cured in mindfulness can be reached by the ear. And it doesn't mean, the organ. And even it doesn't mean, it means, but it means more than that, just the sense of hearing. So when chanting, he uses this example. He gives this specifically. As a child may have their ear pierced. So when the spiritual ear, so Sankhya is, there's the organ, there's the sense of hearing, and there's the spiritual counterpart. So when the spiritual ear is pierced by the sound of the mantra, the ear conquers the mind. And when the mind becomes conquered, that's mindfulness. So if you want your restless mind, if you want to chant nice japa, strive anything to hear, because that's everything. Everything is within the hearing, because the ear can conquer the mind. Yay, conquer the mind. It's the ear. It's sound. It's not just any sound, it's spiritual sound, because let's just say an Olympic athlete, to be really good at what they do, you have to be very focused. And there's discipline and discipline and discipline and discipline and discipline. You know, that their motor functions are combined or coordinated with that, but they can't get the motor functions coordinated without a very focused mind. So they have to live a very disciplined life. Have to. To be successful. Have to. But that's just, then it's temporary. Competition is over and business back to usual. Or anyone that does meditation. There's a meditation state where it's nice, and then you end that meditation and it's over. Ooh, back down again. Or knowledge, then it's back down again, because the modes of nature act, and they pull one back down again. So how do you stay there? Well, it's through sound. And it's not, even if you don't chant attentively, by chanting quantitatively, it'll help the qualitative. But the real goal is qualitative. And of being fixed, where the mind, this is Rupa Goswami's teaching, Vedanta Madhava. I like this verse a lot. I meditated on it. I meditate on it nearly every morning. There's 4 parts. Vedanta Madhava, glorification of the name. How much nectar the 2 cells, tongue, the ear, and the heart. When the tongue vibrates the name, we wish to have many, many tongues. When that sound enters the ear, one wishes to have millions of ears. So that's but if you don't hear, then it's not going to go to the heart level. And when that sound enters the courtyard of the heart, the mind becomes stunned. And the senses become inert. So the sweetness will be tasted when that happens. Or the mindfulness will happen when that happens. And then spiritual perception can happen when that happens. Until that happens, we're on the external. Chanting, or serving, or worshiping, or thising or thating, living our life, but we're still out there and not absorbed in Krishna or with Krishna, that mindfulness message. And one can be in a mindfulness state all the time if one connects with the spiritual ear and sound, then it just carries over into all of what you do. That's our process. Chant and be happy. Okay, see if there's any... Yeah. We have a little microphone for the online people. Well, that's what the tongue does, or the mouth. So the mouth helps the ear. Let's say it in a different way. If you don't pronounce clearly, you're not going to be hearing. If you're, say it conversely, if you're pronouncing clearly, your ear has to be attentive, and the mind has to be attentive. Am I pronouncing clearly? But they're all connected. It's an alignment of body, mind, and the sound. So the tongue makes a sound, the ear hears the sound, and the heart receives the sound. They're connected.
Sometimes some devotees, they say, by mind, just chanting silently and just calmly, and it's a good idea they read, and then some idea just like that. But if we want to engaging this mind, that means this process.
Yes. Now, there is a process of mantra meditation that's silent. Certainly Gayatri mantra is like that. But it's more, from experience, it's more difficult. And to get to that more difficult, it requires sound. Mahamantra is to be chanted aloud. This is discussed in Chaitanya Charitamrita, or excuse me, Chaitanya Bhagavat, where someone is criticizing Haridas Thakur for chanting aloud. You're not supposed to say mantras aloud. There's a criticism. And he gives reference that Lord Chaitanya chanted aloud. So, and there's a reason. The reason has been stated. Is it okay to chant softly? Yeah. Is it okay to chant in your mind? It depends on circumstance, but certainly it's okay. But it's not the method that's prescribed for us. It's the sound method is prescribed for us. Okay? Anyone else in the room? Let's see if there's the room people first, and then if there's online questions.
Maharaj just mentioned that here is that first dawn of light is inauspicious, and I thought Brahma Murta is a good time, auspicious time. But here is mentioned that he took a bath in the river in an inauspicious time. And
just like this, I don't know the technical rule, but just like this past Ekadasi, it was Ekadasi, but it's not suitable for fasting. Did you notice? At least in the Midwest, it was. So we fasted for Ekadasi and Dwadasi. And it was one of those rules. One of those rules is, I don't understand it, but it goes something like this. Our acharyas describe what was inauspicious for. Nanda was actually auspicious, that is to say, there's the solar day, that's real easy, the sun rises and sets, and then rises the next morning, that's a solar day. And then there's a lunar day, that's the moon passing through the nakshatras, or the constellations, and there's 27 nakshatras, and that determines a lunar day. And sometimes lunar days are less than 24 hours. When the Ekadasi lunar day, in this particular case with Nanda, it was 18 hours out of 24. The day was about to complete before the next day began. So although it was still, the sun had not risen, it wasn't the next solar day, he was getting himself ready by bath, then taking grain to break the fast. So he did right. But the agent of Varuna didn't know the rule. Nanda knew the rule. So he arrested him for breaking the rule, but he didn't break the rule. So, somebody asked me 4 days ago or 3 days ago when there was this, not suitable for fasting, what's the rule? I don't understand the detail of it, but it's something like what I just said, the comparison between lunar days and solar days. And sometimes lunar days are so short, there's an overlap, there's a rule, I don't know what it is, and then, the next day becomes the Dwadasi becomes the Ekadasi, and the Ekadasi becomes the Dwadasi. I don't know the rule, but sometimes it's like that. Rarely, but sometimes it's like that. It's in my notes to ask the person who was going to explore with an astrologer, do you now understand the rule? Why it was what it was. So if I get a very simple answer, I'll share that with you, but otherwise, you have at least a ballpark idea. And I'm just repeating what's in our Acharya's commentary about this discrepancy that apparently Varuna's agent thought Nanda had violated something when he hadn't. He knew better than the agent.
So if somebody fasts, just for fasting, nothing to do with Ekadashi, and he will eat something following is okay, because he's not fasting as such, like Ekadashi. He thinks I'm just going to be fasting.
If it's even if it's accidental or unintentional, there's benefit. But to get the benefit, there has to be the breaking of the fast. It's just like Ambarish, and he did a year-long Ekadasi Vrata, and on the final Ekadasi, it was time to break the fast. And there was a big problem because the benefit wouldn't go, because he was doing it for his citizens, not for himself. The benefit would be lost. So he was in a dilemma. So it's unintentional fasting is beneficial also, but there has to be the breaking to get the benefit. So are we ready for online questions or no?
Yes, Maharaj, we have a couple. There was this one from Thakur Vikrant Singh Rajput. His question is how a man can stay their mind in one point.
It's a little cold, somewhere in between. How can one stay where mind is in one point? I gave the answer from Bhakti Siddhanta, and there isn't. It's the best means. That we shouldn't say it's not the only means. We won't say it's the only means. It's the recommended means, and that is rapt attention, hearing. This devotee can read the last purport of Canto 1, Chapter 3, where Prabhupada explains rapt attention. There you'll find the answer. Okay?
This other question from Vishalaksha Das. Guru Maharaj, you have been very nicely to chant with heart and soul. What steps shall I take to be mindful while chanting and hearing the holy names of Lord Sri Krishna?
Well, I didn't say chant with heart and soul. You're saying that. But you're putting words in my mouth and I'm complaining. But you want to know, just the steps are as I described. And you can go back and listen if you don't remember what the steps are. But it's all there. Okay?
One last question from someone SM, I'm not sure who. Guru Maharaj, do they observe Ekadasi in the spiritual world, or was it only observed by Nanda Baba because the pastimes were taking place here?
Gosh. It is said in Scripture that in Bhagavad Gita it says there's no need of sunlight, moonlight, or electricity, because in the spiritual world everything is self-effulgent. And it is also said that in the spiritual world there's day and night, which means there's a sun, there's a rising and setting of the sun. And then there's seasons, although there's no need of moon, there is a moon. And the moon is always a full moon for Krishna's pastimes purposes. At night the moon is there and Krishna does his evening pastimes. So it's a full moon, full moon, full moon. So just with that information, it's deductive to say no. But then on the other hand, it may be yes. That is to say, although it's a full moon, the residents of Braja, although they're beyond the modes of nature and they're beyond any kind of regulations, they still observe regulations. Because that's the life of the Brajbhajas principles. So they may be observing Ekadasi for some transcendental way of calculating. It's an interesting question, but I've never heard anything from our scriptures saying one way or the other. Deductively, no. But on the other hand, yes. Maybe. Because they're followers of religious principles, and Ekadasi is one of them. That's it?
There's one more from Apurva Anand Mataji. Maharaj, Hare Krishna. In general, we fast till afternoon on the appearance day of a Vaishnava. But if the appearance day lies on the next day of Ekadashi, then when should we break fast?
If the appearance day, if it's on a Dwadasi day, is that the question? If the appearance day of a Vaishnav is on the Dwadasi day, then you break the fast the day before. That's, like Vaman Dwadasi, that kind of thing. You're the fasting you observe on the previous day. The breaking of the fast you observe on the previous day. Okay? That's it? Anything? Yeah.
हरे कृष्ण महाराज वैष्णव अपराध से करने से तो हमारी जप में रुचि नहीं आती है, तो किस प्रकार से हमको वैष्णव अपराध से बचना चाहिए और जप में रुचि लगाना चाहिए?
This question is because of Vaishnava Aparad, we don't get ruchi while chanting.
Yes.
So how do we reduce Vaishnava Aparad? How do we increase the ruchi in chanting?
How to decrease Vaishnava Aparad in order to get taste in chanting. Well, how to achieve anything, so by effort and by mercy, that's what we achieve. When we understand what the nature of Vaishnava Aparad is, and how it's detrimental, then you take precaution. Just like it's, COVID-19 time. So you know what causes it, how it's transmitted, so you take precaution. You take precaution about Vaishnava Aparad because of knowing what it is and how dangerous it is. So you take precaution. And mercy. You, in the mood of humility, there may be devotees who they have felt offended, although you had no intention at all to do something that would cause them to feel offended. Sometimes that happens. And then, so you offer this prayer. This is Prabhupada's teaching on this question you're asking, or related. Panchakalpa Tarubhyasya Kripa Sindhubhyevacha. That's our prayer to all the Vaishnavas who we may have unintentionally offended. And if you know that there is someone that you have offended, or they're feeling that you have offended, you didn't do something. You don't think, oh, they're snooty and I'm not going to pay attention to them. You go to that devotee, at least I advise. You go to the devotee and say, I understand, or I have a sense that you're feeling offended. And I don't know what it is that's causing you to feel offended, but my apologies that whatever it was that I did, you're feeling offended. And if that humility, genuine humility is there, the person may just, let it go, or may not let it go, but Nama Prabhu will be forgiving. So that's what we do. You want to reduce by being cautious, and even if there is some mistake, you do these things mentioned, so that we can get taste.